Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmine and this is episode 173, Baby Knits Roundup.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright. I need a drink.
Hello and welcome to episode 173 of the Shiny Bees podcast. I am Jo and I'm your host, back with you again today, which is Tuesday the 2nd of March 2021. And today we are going to be talking about Baby Knits Roundup, and specifically I'm going to be sharing some more yarns and patterns with you that have been contributed by the community with the feedback of the last couple of weeks since doing episodes 171 and 172, talking about good patterns for baby knits and yarns for baby and kid knits in particular. We've got some more suggestions, or I've got some more suggestions for you that have been submitted via the lovely Shiny Bees podcast community. Some good ideas that I haven't heard of before, and therefore I'm going to share them with you because the more patterns, the more ideas, the more inspiration, the better, quite frankly. And also I've got a call for inspiration from one of my lovely and very dear listeners, Kat, who is planning a very special project. So a bit of a chatty one today. Get your brew, get your knitting, and we will crack on with the show. So, first up, a little bit of chat then. I do apologise if you can hear the cats and dogs cast outside. The dog walker has come to pick up next door's dog, and bless, the little hounds in the car are so excited. And the window's open, and we don't want to deprive them of a little bit of an excited yelp, do we? Luckily, it doesn't sound like mine are joining in at the moment, but it might be picked up. A bit of suburban life for you. Exciting. So last week, super busy, which is why there was no episode, because I ended up doing an all-day assessment online with Sam all day. So I was just not there at all for doing an episode. I was absolutely shattered afterwards. He did really well, bless him. He was a little superstar. Got up, got dressed, even put his best shirt on and everything. He was just so cute. I'm like, how is it that he can be proper good as gold on the Zoom calls and then be a complete tearaway other times? But bless him, he did dead well. But it was very, very tiring, and I'd totally run out of words by the end of the day. And then I've been working on my website for Podcasting Unpacked, which is just so nearly there. When it's so nearly there, I feel like I'm at that part in a shawl where you're at the 300 and odd stitch rows, and you're nearly done. You've the structure, it's all there, but you've got that picot bind off staring you in the face that's coming. It's coming. It's just going to be a right flipping pain in the tartars, but you've got to do it to finish the project. And I feel like I'm at that point where progress feels incredibly slow because the rows are 300 odd stitches long. I feel like that's where I am. And I'm also having a massive what happened to the first 2 months of the year caption. I had big plans for my 37th year, which involved becoming a published author. And I have a manuscript for a book. It's 40,000 words long, right? My book is near enough done. And I've got 16 days to get it out, or else I will be 38, I won't be 37 anymore. And I know it is some ARB thing that I put in, this ARB goal. You're like, well, it doesn't need to be done then, does it really? And actually you probably benefit from dragging it out a bit longer, and you could, do more of a roundup and blah, 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 and take pre-orders and whatever. I could, but I'm not that person. I just want it out. I'm like, let's just get it out and then we'll figure out the rest afterwards, which is not the way you're supposed to do it. It's not the way I'd, advise my clients to do it, but that's just my personality, and I'm not going to fight it, right? I'm not going to squash myself into somebody else's overly planned box. It's just not very me. So I feel like, I'm not getting enough stuff done that I want to get done. And, we're here in the UK, and I do have one of the kids at home that's home learning. And we're still in the midst of a pandemic and all of that kind of stuff. But I just kind of thought I would have more done by now. And I'm sure a lot of you are also in that same situation where you're kind of working. And you're just not quite seeing the fruits of your labour yet. Like it's come to that point where it's in the middle of the grind of a project. And I wrote a email to my reset people, my reset crew, which is what a small group coaching that I'm doing at the moment. And in that email, I was talking about a roller coaster and about how it's a very similar analogy. Like you've got to go up that big initial hill and before you start, it's really exciting, right? And you stood in the queue and you can't wait and you're like, yeah. And then you get in and the anticipation is there. And that is what it is like when you start a new project, whether it is something you're building business-wise or whether it is a yarn project or a making project that you're doing. That excitement, the planning, the gathering of materials, the vision, the inspiration is super exciting. But there comes a point whereby you're halfway up the hill, and on a roller coaster, you'd be on the kind of the chain, the chain like where you're going up the hill, and it's quite slow. And all of a sudden, like the seat starts to become a bit uncomfortable, and you start to worry about whether the fastening, the restraint is fastened like tight enough, and pulling it down to get another click out of it, even though you can't breathe when you've pulled it down, and thinking about how it's high, and then it starts to become a little bit anxiety inducing because you're then waiting for the inevitable tipping over of your stomach as you go down the other side. So then all of the doubt starts to creep in, and whether you should get off, and is there an emergency stop button, and was this a great idea, and you get to that point in your knitting as well where you just think, oh, why did I even think about knitting something so big or so complicated? Or you make a mistake and you've got to rip it back. It's all the same sort of thing. And I feel like I'm at that point now, like the 300 stitch row, like I said, that point where I can see the top of it, and I can see once I get there, it's all going to be downhill. Once the structure is there, once you've done that initial capacity building thing, once you've got that potential energy, in the same way that when you get to the top of the roller coaster, the whole ride depends on that, right? It depends on having that initial change in energy, the potential energy to get you through the rest of the ride, which is all downhill from there, right? To be cheesy, it is, but that's the whole point. All roller coasters start with a big hill for that reason, because the potential energy carries you through to the end. And then I started thinking about the Grand National, which is a super old Victorian roller coaster, which I think they closed down because it was a death trap, literally. And I think it was at Blackpool. I get confused in Blackpool and Southport because the 80s all blends into one for me. And it was good. It was two that used to race against each other, but it was built out of wood, so it was super rickety and therefore even more frightening, because even the restraint was just like a bar, and you would quite often like come up out of the seat and hit the bar and then hit it again on the way back down. Like, they are the best kind, aren't they? They are the best kind. Anyway, completely distracted there. But somebody needed to hear that today. I'm sure they did. And, if you are in that space, I am there with you, whether it's in a knitting or a life or a work or a business sense. Just keep sit on the clicks. Just keep going, because you'll regret it. If you get off the roller coaster before it goes down the hill, you will regret it. Nobody wants to climb down those scary, scary steps in the wind to the bottom. They don't. And neither do you. So just stick with it, is the point. But yeah, anyway. So in today's episode, now I've finally got there via a massive segue, are three things. And this one is a bit of a roundup, a community feedback one, just to kind of share the knowledge, really. So first up, we've got an ask for Kat's project. And then we'll go into the baby yarn recommendations in addition to the ones that were covered in the last episode 172. And then some of the pattern recommendations that were covered in episode 171, and I will share those with you because there were some really, really good tips in there that I think you're going to like. So first up, we will go to Kat's question. Now, Kat is one of my lovely, lovely listeners over in the Netherlands, and she has a big project planned, and she was asking in the Shiny Bees podcast community for some recommendations, and I was a little bit nervous because I'm like, this sounds like a really big exciting thing to do, and I don't feel like I can just throw out a recommendation willy-nilly. Like, I feel like it needs some serious thought and reflection. And she's given me full permission to ask the listeners what you think, to give her a little bit of help. So this was her question in Patterns and Inspiration. So she says, "Hey Joe, do you remember the interview question? What yarn would you take on a desert island?" So that was Desert Island Skeins from back when I used to do the formatted interview questions. Really good, actually. I might bring that question back in some kind of format. And she said, "I have a similar dilemma. I'm planning to embark on a long distance hiking journey from Belgium." Oh no, is she in Belgium? I thought she's in Belgium. She's not in the Netherlands. Sorry, Kat. For some reason in my head, you were in the Netherlands. But she says, "I'm planning to embark on a long distance hiking journey from Belgium to Santiago de Compostela, 2,400 kilometres. Not in one go, spread over different holidays. Not sure if I'll ever make it, but I like the clear focus. I'll be starting hopefully in March with the first stretch from home to the south through Belgium. That should fit in the current corona regulations. Being a knitter, I find myself contemplating the travel knitting almost as much as the actual walking, smiley face. We can all identify with that. So she says, I can't take a lot of yarn to keep the weight down, and I plan to take 2 projects, a recreational lace shawl and a project that captures the memories of the journey day by day. Could be as simple as 1 garter stitch ridge per kilometres, or I'm thinking some sort of modular knit with every small module representing a day. That's quite a good idea, because obviously that will keep the weight down. You don't want some massive blanket that you're still trying to knit something on in one piece. So she says, I don't really know what I want to track yet. Weather, sun, rain, cold, feelings, distance, landscape. I don't think I can take colours to represent the different items because it's hard to predict how much yarn I would need per colour. Maybe texture is better. Anyone got ideas? Yarn, patterns, textures, which items could I track? Now, first up, how cool of a project does that sound? Like, that is amazing. It's a massive, again, it kind of comes back unintentionally to the roller coaster analogy of it's going to be a really big undertaking. It is a big undertaking to walk this distance, to plan this kind of walk and this big goal physically, but also the knitting to go along with it is going to be quite a commitment. And hopefully we'll produce something that will be really memorable afterwards. Because of course, Kat is going to finish the walk, right? She's going to finish the hike. She has to. Like, she's going to do it. But what about the knitting that goes along with it? It can't just be some, potato chip stuff necessarily, because it needs a little bit of a plan behind it. So there was quite a bit of chat and suggestions going on in the Shiny Bees podcast community. And if you want to join in on this in the community, just go to shinybees.com/community and request to join, and I will let you in and you can come join in with this. But there were some suggestions about perhaps doing a variation on a modular temperature blanket and whether it would be worth recording the weather every day. It's such a British thing to say, isn't it? Record the weather every day. But a lot of people, do, and it's something that you would definitely notice. And Kat suggested perhaps going with a topographical type map version, which obviously I loved because I'm a geographer. And Helen Swan actually suggested she could split the item into 2 halves, where the left side records the weather and the right side records the topography, steps, mood, or whatever. And maybe the idea of small textured squares to represent different things. But it might be worth using a diary, because if Kat gets too tired, then she can, catch up on the knitting later, but she will have the record. So it sounds like a really fun project. And what Kat and I would love more than ever is for you to join in and help, because the listeners to this podcast are super smart. So I would love to hear what suggestions you've got for Kat. And just tag me at Shiny Bees if you're not in the community, or you can email me info@shinybees.com with any suggestions for Kat. And if you're doing anything similar or you've undertaken anything similar in terms of a big physical challenge or in terms of a big knitting challenge, then definitely get in touch, because I'm sure, along with the suggestions of things that she could make, Kat would really appreciate some encouragement from people who are a little bit further ahead on the journey, who've done something big like this before, and can give us some top tips, because it's always good to hear some recommendations and some inspiration from people who are just a little bit further on than you, or in fact have done the whole thing. 2,400 kilometres. That is a long way. But I'm sure, Kat, you are going to do it because you're a legend. So that was my ask. And now we're going to move on to the baby projects and the yarns. So on to the community feedback for the baby yarns then. Thank you to everyone who has been in touch. Most of the chat has been in the community, which is awesome. I really love going in there because there's always someone knitting something beautiful or knitting somewhere beautiful or reading an awesome book. So it's really good. Helen Swan got in touch and she recommended Sheepy's Colour Crafter as an alternative to Stylecraft DK. It is an acrylic as well, it's 100% acrylic, but she says it is a little bit squishier than Stylecraft DK and has a fair amount of drape. Now, you can get that for £1.99 per 100 grams, and you can get it from Wool Warehouse, amongst other places in the UK, certainly, and tons and tons and tons of shades. 94 on the shade count. So, yeah, you're going to be winning here. All of the names are Dutch names, so, or appear to be Dutch names, certainly. Although some of them are in English. And then, like The Hague, I thought it was like Den Haag. And some are in Dutch, which is cool. And lots of oranges, somewhat unsurprisingly. They look exactly the same. I'm like, Ghent and The Hague and, you know, look the same. And Leeuwarden and Vlissingen look the same to me. But, you know, I can't see that many colours of orange. So, clearly, because they must be different. But loads of options there. Loads and loads of options for colours. So, give Sheepies a check out if you want a different option to Stylecraft. Wendy Dinage was knitting for a couple at work and was excited to be knitting and thought she would go and do a little bit of stash busting. However, she went to have a look at the baby yarns anyway, just to see what was there, and was reminded that the couple she was knitting for are very eco-conscious and vegan. So obviously she wanted to pick something that had both of those credentials in order to give them something that's going to be used. And she had a look at the Nurturing Fibres Eco Bamboo, and is going to be knitting her project out of that from You and Ply, which is great. You know, there is definitely an option for everyone when it comes to yarns, and acrylics have their place in the same way that bamboos do, and merinos do, and the breed yarns do. Like, everything has its place, and it's about matching that place and that person and that project together rather than sticking slavishly to any fads or trends or anything else. Like, you know, we all get the FOMO, whatever. Everyone wanted a Furby at one point, didn't they? And Pogs, right? But they're a flash in the pan now. The stuff that has been steady and carried on coming back it was not the dead trendy stuff. I mean, who remembers fidget spinners? Like, that's not a thing really anymore, is it? You can get them, but everyone's not going crazy for it. And it's the same with your knitting, you know, pick what you want to pick and knit with what you want to knit with, and, you know, bugger anyone else. It's not their knitting, is it? It's your knitting. Do what you want. So, yeah, in terms of the baby patterns then, there were loads and loads of suggestions for this, which was awesome. So, unsurprisingly, Echo Zulu, as I call her, Elizabeth Zimmerman, EZ, lots of votes for the baby surprise jacket from the Knitter's Almanac is what people like to make. It's a little bit like knitting origami, and you can knit it out of sock yarn and knit it in one piece, then you sew it together and you've got this little jacket. Always very, very popular and you can make it look however you want because it's quite a straightforward and simple pattern, which is really cool. Nicola Nolan recommends Knitted with Love by Jane Ellison for baby knits. It's not in print anymore, but she says you can get the individual patterns from Pearl and Jane. So that would be her recommendation. Laura Stevens, Dr. Laura, recommends Nevis top-down cardigan. That's her go-to cardigan from Mariana's Lazy Daisy Days. And she has sizing for preemie babies as well. So if you like to do a bit of preemie knitting, and a lot of people do like to do preemie knitting for the local hospitals or whatever, then that could be a good thing for you to check out. Mariana's Lazy Daisy Days. Alison Naylor is a big fan of Ogre knitwear. I think it's Ogre, O-G-E, Ogre knitwear. And her favourite is the overalls with cable detail on cuffs and bodice, and also the Dorothy Helen baby blanket. So she says they're available on Lovecrafts and Ravelry. I will link to all of these suggestions and patterns as well, by the way, in the show notes, which will be at shinybees.com/173 as usual. Maureen Bulger likes the leafy baby blanket by Layla Aliva. It's available at silkandwool.eu and it's a freebie on Ravelry as well. And she makes it in worsted weight and it knits really quickly and it looks way more complicated than it is. And Laura has also made a few of those, so quite a popular suggestion there. A blanket always goes down well and it's one of those things that they can keep for a long time. And they can still have as the kind of, a small person, then an older person. Like there's always going to be a use for a blanket. You're not necessarily going to be trying to squash a little beret on your head when you're 25, Maureen was actually confused. She thought my nephew was called Boris. He's not my nephew. That's the Prime Minister. And I'm really interested, though, to see how many people do call their child Boris this year and how many people don't. So Laura has another favourite pattern for us, and that is the Beloved Bonnet by Tin Can Knits. And she often adds embroidery on the side as well, which is a great idea for personalising it even further. And it's dead cute. It's quite a traditional looking bonnet, is the Beloved Bonnet. So, but everyone always, can make use of a bonnet. So all good. Anna Freeberg has recommended the Sunshine Bonnet by Katarina Lindhagen. And she says it's a lovely baby hat. And Jade Horson, who is a new listener, hello Jade, thank you for listening and being new and being awesome at knitting, by the way. She's just finished and she included a picture and it looks epic. Like, I would be super happy to receive this blanket. It's a mosaic blanket by Pearl Soho, but she used a colour changing yarn. So it looks stripy underneath the pattern. It looks really, really good, really cool. And obviously then it matches like various different things. It's not just one colour. Because there's a lot of colours in it, if it gets stuff spilt on it, you're not necessarily going to notice it immediately like you would do with some of the more traditional white and cream blankets. Kendra Steele suggested one of those Little Mermaid tail snuggly sacks as an option. No pattern link from there, but there are quite a lot available online for just looks like a Little Mermaid tail. It's quite cute. Anna Jordan's go-to baby gift knitting is the Gramps cardigan by Tin Can Knits. And very nearly put this in the pattern pick because I think it's dead cute. And it's got elbow patches and I'm a geographer, so clearly that is part of the stereotype to have elbow patches. And it turns out I actually replied saying that. Everyone loves an elbow patch, especially geographers. So true. So true. But really cute, really cute and wearable. And Kat, bless her, apparently you can kill acrylic. She washed Stylecraft UK at 60 degrees and they went a bit funny. So just be careful for that. Anna Grimm has a suggestion for these little owls. So cute. It's like a little knitted owl with really, really big crocheted eyes. It makes it look a little bit cartoony. And she made like a bunch of them for her cousins when they started having babies. Something you can keep a little bit longer than things like garments for babies. Linda Hartley, that I missed this because it's in the wrong thread. Linda, it's in the wrong thread, Linda. Crimes. crimes on the threads. I'm only joking. I don't mind. But she has some more yarns that she chipped in with, which was King Cole Merino Blend, Stylecraft Life Vintage DK, which is 20% wool, Malabrigo sock yarn, and Rowan Summer Light Cotton 4-ply. So some more suggestions for yarn there. Linda Hartley also loves EZ's Baby Surprise Jacket. And The Troublemaker by Catherine Folketh, which is a stripy, again, it's like a grandpa type cardigan, stripy, with a little collar knitted on, which is quite sweet. So we've got some other suggestions. Kendra's knitting a jumper with a puffin on it, which is dead cute, and Sheep Stitch knitted a wee chickadee by Isolde. So loads of different options there, and some ideas for you to go at, really. I will put links to all of those in the show notes so you can access them in one place. But yeah, they're what the community suggests. The hive mind of the Shiny Bees podcast has suggested those patterns. So definitely tag me in if you decide to knit any of those as a result of this episode. Then let me know. Give me the feedback. I always love to hear. I like knowing what everyone's up to and what you're knitting, because it's a great source of inspiration. So that's all we have time for this week, because I have to go back to building a website and getting this ship launched. I'll be glad when it's done. I just wish it felt like I was getting there quicker. But alas, I'll get there eventually. You always do. If you keep at it, you'll get there. Just like that pesky Pico Brindorf. So yeah, I will be back again next week. But until then, happy crafting, and I shall speak to you again soon. Cheers! You've been listening to the Shiny Bees podcast. Show notes for this episode can be found on the website at shinybees.com/173.
To get back in touch with you, if that's all